Night has settled over this world like a held breath. The bustle of the day has faded, leaving only the soft cadence of work that never truly stops. Tonight, we find ourselves drawn to the Mos Eisley Cantina on closing shift. Settle into the stillness. Let your bed hold you softly. Let your thoughts grow quiet and distant. Let the last of your effort melt away. This is canon and calm. Let us begin. The twin suns have finally dipped below the jagged horizon of the dune sea, leaving behind a sky of bruised purple and deep, cooling indigo. Inside the thick sandstone walls of Chalmunds, the heat of the day lingers like a heavy blanket, trapped by the ancient masonry. The last of the spacers have staggered out into the night, their boots crunching on the grit that always finds its way inside, no matter how many times we sweep it away. I pick up a damp cloth, its fibers worn thin by years of scrubbing, and begin the slow, rhythmic circuit of the bar top. The surface is cold to the touch, a polished slab of dark stone that has felt the weight of 1,000 weary elbows and the spill of 100 different intoxicants. In the corner, the power generator hums a low, resonant note, a steady vibration that I can feel in the soles of my boots. It is the heartbeat of this place, a mechanical pulse that keeps the lights flickering and the cooling units struggling against the desert's breath. I move to the drink dispensers, the intricate tangle of pipes and valves that the regulars call the distillery. The brass is tarnished, stained by the acidic bite of blue milk and the pungent residue of Corellian ale. I work the lever, watching a single thick drop of amber liquid cling to the nozzle before finally letting go and splashing onto the floor. The silence here is never truly silent. It is filled with the clicks of cooling metal and the distant, lonely whistle of the wind outside the blast doors. I reach for the first glass, a heavy tumbler of thick green silica, and begin to polish it with a steady, circular motion. There is a certain peace in this work, a quiet order that emerges when the chaos of the day shift finally fades into the shadows. I think of the many worlds these glasses have seen, the many hands that have held them, each one leaving a faint, invisible history behind. The moisture vaporator in the alcove lets out a long, wheezing sigh, a sound of mechanical exhaustion that mirrors my own. I adjust the settings on the control panel, my fingers tracing the worn Aurebesh characters that have almost been rubbed away by time. Outside, the scavengers will be emerging from their burrows, but here, under the dim glow of the recessed lights, the world feels small and manageable. I pick up a stray coin, a weathered credit chip from some distant system in the outer rim, and turn it over in my palm. It is cold, metallic, and heavy with the weight of someone else's journey, forgotten in the rush to leave before the local authorities begin their rounds. I set it aside on the back shelf, where a small collection of lost things has gathered over the months. A broken comlink, a single glove made of worn bantha hide, and a small carved totem from a world I will never visit. The ventilation fans overhead spin with a rhythmic wobble, casting long, slow-moving shadows across the pitted floor. I can smell the faint metallic tang of ozone from the droid detector at the entrance, its sensors currently dormant and unblinking. The air is thick with the scent of spice and old smoke, a perfume that has soaked into the very pores of the stone over decades of business. I move to the booths, the deep circular recesses where deals are made and secrets are whispered in a dozen different tongues. The cushions are cracked and peeling, the synth leather worn down to the backing by the constant friction of travelers and rogues. I find a discarded datapad tucked into the crease of a seat, its screen dark and its casing scarred by carbon scoring. I wonder what stories it holds, what coordinates or manifests are locked away inside its silent circuits. The light from the street lamps filters through the high, narrow windows, casting pale bars of white across the dust motes, dancing in the air. I take a deep breath, the air tasting of dry earth and the faint, sweet smell of the hydroponic gardens nearby. The cooling pipes behind the bar begin to rattle, a sign that the primary reservoir is cycling through its final stage of the night. I listen to the sound, of familiar music that tells me the first hour of the shift is drawing to a close. I pick up the broom, its bristles stiff and clogged with the fine red sand of the Jundland wastes. Each stroke across the floor is a quiet rasp, a sound that seems to fill the empty room with a sense of purpose. The shadows in the corners seem to deepen, stretching out as the power grid fluctuates, momentarily dimming the overhead lights. I pause for a moment, leaning on the handle of the broom, and listen to the absolute stillness of the desert night. It is a heavy silence, one that presses against the walls and makes the cantina feel like an island in a vast, dark sea. I can hear the faint, melodic chiming of a wind bell from a neighboring shop, a delicate sound that carries on the cooling breeze. I return to my task, moving the pile of sand toward the service entrance, where the wind will eventually claim it once again. The metal door of the storage locker groans as I pull it open, the hinges screaming for a drop of lubricant that I never seem to find the time to apply. Inside, the shelves are stacked with crates of varying sizes, some marked with the logos of the Trade Federation, others completely anonymous. I count the remaining canisters of gas, their frosted sides cold enough to numb my fingertips through my work gloves. There is a comfort in the inventory, in the physical reality of these objects, that keep the establishment running day after day. I check the seals on the large vat of fermented juice, the pressure gauge needle hovering just within the green zone. The smell here is stronger, a concentrated burst of fruit and chemicals that tickles the back of my throat. I close the locker door and turn the heavy latch, the sound of the metal bolts sliding home echoing through the empty hallway. I walk back toward the main room, my footsteps sounding loud and deliberate on the hard-packed earth and stone. The light from the bar reflects off the polished brass of the pipes, creating a warm, golden glow in the center of the room. I see my own reflection in the mirror behind the bar, a tired figure framed by bottles of iridescent liquids and the dark shapes of the cooling units. The night is still young, and there is much yet to be done before the first sun rises over the horizon. I reach for the cleaning solvent, the bottle cool and heavy in my hand as I prepare to tackle the stubborn stains on the lower tables. The residue of 1,000 conversations is etched into these surfaces, and I begin to scrub the first one away, focusing on the rhythmic motion of my arm. I move away from the central bar, my boots scuffing against the uneven floor as I head toward the alcoves. These shadowed recesses are where the real business of Mos Eisley happens, away from the prying eyes of the Imperial patrols. The air in the first booth is stagnant, holding the ghost of a dozen different tobacco blends and the sharp, metallic tang of blaster oil. I run my hand along the curved stone wall, feeling the heat that the building has trapped during the long, blistering day. It is cooling now, but only slowly, the stone releasing its burden like a tired beast of burden. I begin to clear the table, my fingers brushing against a deep gouge in the wood, a reminder of a disagreement that ended poorly for someone. I spray the cleaning fluid, the fine mist catching the light like a cloud of tiny, floating diamonds before it settles on the surface. I wipe in circular motions, the cloth dragging against the stubborn grime that has accumulated over hours of whispered conversations. There is a strange intimacy in this work, a feeling of being a silent witness to the secrets that were left behind in the dark. I find a small copper coin wedged into a crack, its surface worn smooth by years of circulation through the outer rim systems. I slip it into my pocket, a tiny bonus for the night's labor, and move on to the next booth. Each one has its own character, its own lingering scent, and its own collection of discarded memories. The bandstand is my next stop, a small, raised stage that still seems to echo with the frantic, upbeat rhythm of the Clue horns. The Bith musicians are gone now, likely resting in some cramped boarding house nearby, their instruments safely tucked away. I step onto the platform, the metal plates groaning under my weight, a sound that feels startlingly loud in the cavernous room. I see a broken string from a filak, lying curled on the floor like a tiny silver snake. I pick it up, the wire thin and sharp, and think of the music that once flowed through it. It is quiet now, the only sound being the distant hum of the refrigeration units and the occasional whistle of the wind through the eaves. I take a moment to adjust the lighting, turning the dial until the stage is bathed in a soft, amber glow. It makes the dust motes dancing in the air look like tiny sparks of gold floating in a dark, silent sea. I sweep the stage, the broom making a rhythmic, shushing sound that is almost hypnotic in its consistency. I find a velvet pouch, forgotten under one of the chairs, its fabric worn thin and smelling of exotic spices. I set it on the bar for later, wondering who it belonged to and if they will ever return to claim it. The night feels longer when I am alone with these fragments of other people's lives, a series of unfinished stories. The kitchen door is heavy, made of thick, reinforced durasteel to keep the smells and the heat contained. I push it open, the hydraulic hiss a sharp contrast to the silence of the main room, and step into the cramped workspace. The air here is thick and humid, a heavy blanket of grease and steam that clings to my clothes and skin. I move to the large central vat where the daily stew is prepared, the metal sides still warm to the touch. I begin the process of draining the remaining liquid, the gurgling sound of the pipes echoing through the small space. It is a messy task, but there is a satisfaction in seeing the stainless steel emerge from beneath the layers of cooked-on food. I scrub the burners next, the wire brush making a harsh, scraping noise that vibrates through my arm. The smell of charred meat and pungent roots fills my nostrils, a scent that I have come to associate with the deepest hours of the night. I check the temperature gauges on the walk-in cooler, the needles holding steady in the optimal range for the perishables. Inside, the crates of blue milk and sides of Ronto meat are stacked neatly, their surfaces frosted with a thin layer of ice. I close the door firmly, the magnetic seal engaging with a solid, reassuring thud that echoes off the tiled walls. In the corner, the small droid charging station is silent, its indicator lights glowing a soft, steady green. I take a moment to wipe the dust from the charging leads, the plastic cables stiff and cold in my hands. We do not allow droids in the main room, but they are essential back here, performing the heavy lifting that human hands cannot manage. I think of the binary chirps and whistles that fill this room during the rush, a language of efficiency and logic. Now, there is only the hum of the power converter, a low-frequency vibration that I can feel in my teeth. I finish the kitchen floor, the mop leaving behind a glistening trail of water that reflects the overhead strips. I step back out into the main room, the cooler air feeling like a physical relief against my damp skin. I head toward the refresher, a part of the job that I never look forward to but cannot be ignored. The door slides open with a hesitant jerk, the track clogged with the omnipresent sand of Tatooine. The lights inside flicker, a rhythmic pulsing that casts long, twitching shadows across the cracked tiles. I begin the work of cleaning the basins, the water running cold and clear from the taps, a precious resource that we use sparingly. The sound of the water splashing against the porcelain is the only thing I hear, a lonely noise in the dark. I fix a leaking pipe beneath the third sink, my wrench turning the heavy nut until the steady drip finally ceases. The silence that follows is absolute, a heavy weight that seems to press in from all sides of the small room. I stand for a moment, looking at my reflection in the tarnished mirror, seeing the lines of fatigue etched into my face. The night is halfway through, and the hardest part of the shift is still ahead of me, the long wait for the dawn. I gather my supplies and leave the refresher, the door sliding shut behind me with a final metallic click. I walk toward the back entrance, the heavy door that leads out into the narrow alleyway behind the cantina. I unlock the bolts, the sound of the tumblers falling into place, a familiar sequence of clicks and clacks. I push the door open, and the cool night air of the desert rushes in, smelling of dry stone and distant stars. I step out into the alley, my boots crunching on the loose gravel and discarded bits of machinery. The twin moons of Tatooine are high in the sky, casting a pale, ghostly light over the rounded rooftops of the city. It is beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, a landscape of silver and shadow that stretches out to the horizon. I move the heavy waste canisters to the collection point, the wheels rattling loudly on the uneven ground. A small scavenger scurries away into the darkness, its eyes glowing for a brief second in the light from the doorway. I stop to catch my breath, leaning against the cool stone wall and looking up at the vast expanse of the galaxy. The stars are so bright here, untroubled by the thick atmospheres of the core worlds, like a million tiny fires burning in the dark. I feel small in the face of such immensity, a single worker in a single city, on a dusty, forgotten planet. It is a grounding thought, one that makes the mundane tasks of the night feel more manageable. I return inside, pulling the door shut and sliding the heavy bolts back into their sockets with a sense of finality. The cantina feels different now, more intimate, as if the desert night has been successfully locked outside. I walk back to the bar, my footsteps echoing in the empty space, and pick up the ledger to record the night's inventory. The paper is yellowed and brittle, the ink fading in places where the moisture has seeped into the pages over the years. I write down the numbers of canisters used and the remaining stock of spirits, my handwriting slow and deliberate. There is a sense of order in these lists, a way of making sense of the chaos that the day brings. I notice a small crack in the glass of the primary dispenser, a thin line that reflects the light like a stray hair. I run my thumb over it, feeling the sharp edge, and make a note to have it replaced before the next shipment arrives. The machinery of the bar is old, a collection of valves and tubes that requires constant attention to keep functioning. I listen to the heartbeat of the building, the rhythmic pulsing of the pumps, and the soft sighing of the ventilation. It is a living thing in its own way, a sanctuary for the weary and the desperate, and I am its caretaker. I move to the storage room at the far end of the hall, where the extra furniture and cleaning supplies are kept. The air here is dry and dusty, smelling of old wood and the chemical tang of industrial solvents. I find a stack of clean towels and begin to fold them, the fabric rough against my palms but smelling of the sun. It is a quiet, meditative task, the repetitive motion allowing my mind to wander through the memories of the night. I think of the faces I saw, the snatches of conversation I overheard, and the general sense of unease that seems to hang over the city. The shadow of a passing patrol craft glides across the high windows, its engines a low, distant rumble that fades as quickly as it came. I pause, my hands still on the fabric, and wait for the sound to vanish completely before I continue my work. The Empire is always there, a silent presence in the background of our lives, like the heat or the sand. I finish the towels and set them neatly on the shelf, the white fabric standing out against the dark wood. I take a deep breath, the air in the storage room feeling cooler and more still than the rest of the building. I walk back to the main room, the light from the bar, now the only source of illumination in the entire building. The shadows have retreated to the edges of the room, leaving the center bathed in a warm, golden pool of light. I take a seat on one of the high stools, my legs aching from the hours of standing and walking. I look at the empty room, seeing it not as a place of business, but as a silent stage waiting for the next act. The silence is not empty. It is full of the potential of the coming day, of the people who will soon fill these seats. I close my eyes for a moment, listening to the absolute stillness of the Mos Eisley night, and feel a sense of peace. I reach for the small toolkit I keep under the counter, the metal box heavy and cool in my lap. There is a loose hinge on the main door that has been bothering me all night, a tiny imperfection in the smooth operation of the building. I walk to the entrance, the toolkit clinking softly with every step I take toward the heavy, rounded portal. I kneel down, the floor cold against my knees, and begin to tighten the screws with a slow, steady pressure. The metal bites into the wood, and I feel the hinge grow firm and silent under my touch. It is a small thing, but it matters to me, this act of maintaining the world I inhabit. I pack away my tools and stand up, stretching my back and feeling the satisfying pop of my joints. The first hints of the pre-dawn light are beginning to filter through the cracks in the door, a pale grey that signals the end of my shift. I walk back to the bar one last time, checking the seals on the bottles and ensuring that everything is in its proper place. The room is clean, the air is still, and the silence is profound. A perfect moment of transition between the night and the day. I pick up my cloak from the hook behind the bar, the heavy fabric feeling like a familiar weight on my shoulders. I am ready to step out into the world again, to leave the safety of the cantina and face the rising suns. The hum of the power grid shifts into a lower frequency, a signal that the morning cycle is about to begin. I turn off the main lights, the room plunging into a soft grey twilight that feels more natural than the artificial glow. I walk toward the exit, my footsteps the only sound in the quiet building, a final heartbeat before the city wakes up. I reach for the handle of the door, feeling the cold metal beneath my hand, and prepare to step out into the desert. The journey home will be long, but the cool air will be refreshing after the heat of the kitchen and the bar. I watch as the first sliver of light touches the sand outside. The door, thick and heavy with the weight of reinforced durasteel, yields with a low metallic groan. As it swings wide, the heat of the cantina is replaced by the sudden biting chill of the Tatooine night. The air out here is thin, tasting of dry minerals, and the faint metallic tang of the nearby power grid. I step out onto the permacrete, the grit of fine sand crunching softly beneath the soles of my boots. The alleyway is a narrow canyon of shadow, lit only by the pale overlapping glows of the twin moons above. Gumrasen and Gurmesa hang like silent observers in the dark tapestry of the outer rim sky. I pause for a moment, letting the silence of the desert settle over me like a heavy, cooling blanket. The city of Mos Eisley does not sleep, but it breathes differently in these hours before the suns truly rise. There is a rhythmic pulse to the night, a steady, low-frequency thrum coming from the moisture vaporators nearby. I turn my attention to the exterior maintenance panels, the metal cold and slightly damp with the morning's condensation. My fingers trace the seams of the casing, feeling for the slight vibrations that indicate a healthy power flow. Everything here is weathered, the surfaces pitted by years of relentless sandstorms and the harsh, unforgiving climate. I reach for the first moisture trap, a tall, slender cylinder tucked into a recessed niche in the sandstone wall. The collection vanes are coated in a fine layer of dust, which I wipe away with a slow, deliberate motion. Underneath the grime, the alloy is dark and resilient, built to withstand the extremes of this desert world. I check the gauge, the needle hovering steadily in the middle of the dial, indicating a successful night of collection. It is a small victory. A few liters of precious water gathered from the thin, dry atmosphere of the wastes. I move to the second trap, my footsteps echoing faintly against the high, curved walls of the surrounding buildings. A small lizard, its scales reflecting the moonlight in shades of grey and silver, scuttles across the path. It vanishes into a crack in the foundation, leaving behind only the memory of its hurried, scratching movement. I continue my rounds, checking the seals on the secondary generator that hums deep within the cantina's outer shell. The heat it radiates is a gentle warmth, a reminder of the mechanical heart that keeps this place alive. I adjust a loose cable, the copper wiring glinting briefly as it catches the light from a distant street lamp. The lamp flickers, a dying ember of orange, in the vast blue-grey darkness of the sleeping spaceport. I look down the length of the street, seeing the silhouettes of parked transports and the hulking shapes of cargo containers. They look like prehistoric beasts, resting in the sand until the morning call of the dockworkers wakes them. The silence is broken only by the distant, mournful cry of a lone bantha, somewhere far beyond the city walls. It is a haunting sound, a reminder of the vast, empty wilderness that surrounds this small pocket of civilization. I return to the doorway, my task finished, but I do not go back inside just yet. I lean against the cool stone, looking up at the stars that seem so close, yet so impossibly far away. Each pinprick of light is a sun, perhaps with its own worlds, its own workers, its own quiet nights. I feel small in the face of such vastness, a single soul tending to a single corner of a massive, ancient galaxy. But there is a comfort in that smallness, a sense of belonging to a grand, slow-moving clockwork of existence. The first sun, Tatooine, begins to cast a faint violet glow across the eastern horizon, signaling the transition. The shadows begin to shift, losing their sharp edges as the light of the coming day starts to bleed into the sky. I take one last breath of the crisp night air, feeling it fill my lungs and steady my tired mind. The work is never truly done, but for now the exterior is secure and the systems are functioning as they should. I pull the heavy door shut, the latch clicking into place with a finality that echoes through the quiet alleyway. Back inside, the air is still warm, smelling of the spiced drinks and the lingering smoke of the evening's patrons. I walk toward the back of the building, where the stairs lead down into the deep, cool shadows of the storage cellar. The air down here is different, heavy with the scent of damp earth and the sharp, fermented tang of aging grains. The stone steps are worn smooth by decades of heavy boots, and the weight of countless metal crates descending deep into the belly of the cantina. I feel the temperature drop, a welcome relief from the lingering dry warmth of the upper floors, as the thick subterranean walls hold the chill of the deep Tatooine ground. The transition is sudden, a threshold of cool silence that wraps around me like a heavy blanket, muffling the distant, rhythmic hum of the spaceport above. I reach the bottom, and my hand finds the toggle for the secondary lighting, a soft, amber glow flickering to life along the vaulted ceiling. The cellar is a labyrinth of alcoves and arched doorways, each one filled with the supplies that keep the bar running through the long, chaotic days. Here, away from the noise and the persistent dust of the desert, the silence is absolute, broken only by the steady, rhythmic pulse of the cooling units. It is a sanctuary of order where the chaos of the galaxy is reduced to neat rows of canisters and the slow, steady drip of condensation. I walk toward the first row of coolant tanks, my boots making a soft, crunching sound on the fine sand that has settled over the stone floor. The tanks are tall and cylindrical, their surfaces coated in a thin layer of frost that glints in the amber light. I place my hand against the cold metal, feeling the vibration of the internal pumps as they circulate the liquid nitrogen through the veins of the building. It is a low-frequency thrum, a heartbeat that resonates in my chest, anchoring me to the physical reality of the work at hand. I checked the pressure gauges, one by one, watching the needles hover in the safe green zones of their circular dials. Everything is as it should be, a testament to the durability of these ancient, refurbished systems that have seen more years than I have. I move to the storage racks, where the heavy barrels of ale are kept stacked 3 high in the shadows of the furthest alcove. The wood of the barrels is dark and stained, bound by iron hoops that have begun to show the first signs of reddish rust. I run my fingers over the rough surface of a barrel, feeling the grain of the wood and the cool, solid weight of the liquid inside. It is a grounding sensation, a connection to the craftsmanship of brewers on worlds I will likely never visit. I pull a small, handheld data slate from my belt, its screen casting a pale blue light across my face and the surrounding stone. The list of inventory is long, a catalogue of exotic spirits and local brews that requires careful, meticulous verification. I begin at the far end of the rack, counting the containers of spice-infused wine, their ceramic jugs cool and smooth to the touch. I mark each one off, the soft tap of my finger on the screen, the only sound in the cavernous room. There is a meditative quality to the task, a repetition that allows my mind to drift while my hands remain focused on the count. I find a crate of Corellian Reserve, tucked away in a corner, its seal still intact and covered in a fine layer of grey dust. It is a rare find in a place like this, a high-value item that must be handled with care and documented with precision. I wipe the dust away with my sleeve, revealing the embossed crest of the shipping guild, a reminder of the vast interconnected trade routes that span the stars. For a moment I imagine the journey this crate took, the starships it inhabited, and the different hands that carried it across light years of empty space. It is a small piece of a much larger story, resting quietly in the dark of a desert basement. I move to the refrigeration lockers, where the more delicate ingredients are stored behind thick, insulated doors. As I pull the handle, a cloud of cold vapor escapes, swirling around my feet like a miniature fog, before dissipating into the warmer air. Inside, the shelves are lined with jars of preserved fruits and containers of bioluminescent nectar that cast a faint, ethereal glow. The light is soft and pulsing, shifting between shades of pale green and deep violet as the organisms within react to the change in pressure. I check the seals on the jars, ensuring that no air has compromised the quality of these precious imported delicacies. There is a jar of pickled desert pears, their skins translucent and pale, floating in a thick golden syrup. They are a local staple, harvested from the moisture-rich canyons far to the north, where the shadows linger longest. I admire the way the light catches the syrup, turning it into a liquid amber that seems to glow from within. It is a small beauty, a detail that most would overlook, but in the quiet of the night shift it becomes a focal point of my attention. I carefully rearrange the jars, making sure the oldest stock is at the front, following the timeless logic of the service trade. I close the locker door, the heavy latch clicking into place, with a solid, satisfying thud that echoes through the cellar. I turn my attention to the carbonation manifold, a complex web of pipes and valves that controls the flow of gas to the taproom above. The pipes are warm to the touch, carrying the heat away from the compression chambers and into the cooling vents. I listen for any leaks, any hiss of escaping gas that might indicate a failing seal or a hairline fracture in the metal. The silence of the cellar makes it easy to hear, the subtle nuances of the machinery, the tiny clicks and sighs that tell the story of its health. I find a small leak near the primary regulator, a faint rhythmic whistling that is barely audible even in this stillness. I take a wrench from my utility belt, the metal cold and heavy in my hand, and carefully tighten the fitting. I move slowly, applying even pressure until the whistling stops, replaced by the steady, silent flow of the gas. It is a simple fix, but one that brings a sense of accomplishment, a small correction that ensures the smooth operation of the day to come. I wipe a smudge of grease from the pipe, my cloth coming away dark and oily, a mark of the labor that keeps this place functioning. I move further back into the deep storage area, where the walls are made of rough-hewn rock rather than dressed stone. This part of the cellar was carved directly into the bedrock of the plateau, and the air here is even cooler and more still. I see the remains of old forgotten equipment, rusted frames of droids, and discarded power cells half buried in the sand. They are the ghosts of previous shifts, the debris of decades of maintenance and repair left to gather dust in the dark. I walk past them, my footsteps light, as if trying not to disturb the history that rests in these shadows. I find the krayt I was looking for, a heavy metal box containing the replacement filters for the moisture vaporators. It is tucked behind a stack of empty canisters, and I have to shift them aside, their metal hulls clanging softly as they brush against one another. The filters are essential, the lifeblood of the cantina's water supply, and I check each one to ensure they are clean and ready for installation. They are intricate devices filled with fine synthetic mesh that can trap even the smallest particles of dust and salt. I count them out, 12 in total, enough to last through the next sandstorm season if we are careful. I rest for a moment, sitting on a low stone ledge and looking back toward the stairs, where the amber light fades into the gloom. The cellar feels like a living thing, a slow-moving organism that breathes and pulses in the dark, far beneath the feet of the travelers above. I think about the people who built this place, the laborers who hauled the stone, and the engineers who laid the pipes all those years ago. Their work remains, a sturdy foundation for the life that happens here, a legacy of sweat and iron that endures in the silence. I feel a sense of kinship with them, a shared understanding of the quiet, essential tasks that hold a world together. I stand up, brushing the dust from my trousers, and pick up the data slate once more to finish the final section of the inventory. I move to the spice locker, a small, reinforced room, with a heavy, coded lock that requires a steady hand to operate. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of 1,000 different worlds, a dizzying array of aromas that range from sweet and floral to sharp and acrid. The spices are stored in small glass vials, each one labeled with a handwritten tag in a variety of different scripts. I check the levels of the most popular blends, the ones that give the cantina's signature drinks, their unique, lingering heat. I find a vial of Caecilian cinnamon, its deep red powder shimmering like ground rubies in the light of my glow rod. It is a potent substance used sparingly to add a kick to the local ales, and its scent is warm and comforting, reminding me of distant, more temperate climates. I record the amount remaining, noting that we will need to trade for more before the next freighter arrives from the inner rim. The logistics of the cantina are a delicate balance, a constant dance of supply and demand that plays out in the quiet corners of the storage room. I lock the spice locker, the tumblers clicking into place with a complex musical sequence of sounds. I make one final pass through the main cellar area, checking the floor for any signs of pests or moisture seepage from the walls. I see the tracks of a small desert rodent in the dust near the back entrance, a series of tiny, delicate prints that lead toward the ventilation shafts. It is a harmless visitor seeking shelter from the cold of the night, and I leave it be, knowing that it will be gone long before the first patrons arrive. The ecosystem of the cantina extends even here, a hidden world of small creatures and quiet movements that exist in the margins of our perception. I reach the base of the stairs and look up at the rectangular opening of the doorway, where the light is a different, more vibrant shade of gold. My work here is done. The inventory recorded, the systems checked, and the supplies organized for the coming day. I feel a sense of completion, a quiet satisfaction that comes from a job well done, even if no one will ever see the effort that went into it. The cellar will remain dark and cool, a silent guardian of the cantina's resources, until the next time I descend into its depths. I begin the climb back up, my legs feeling the weight of the night's labor, but my spirit feeling light and steady. Each step takes me closer to the surface, and the sounds of the upper floors begin to return, the faint hum of the power grid and the distant whistle of the wind. I move through the threshold of the cellar door, leaving the cool, damp air behind and stepping back into the familiar warmth of the main building. The transition is as sharp as before, a return to the world of light and movement. But I carry the stillness of the cellar with me. I walk toward the rear service corridor where the cleaning droids are docked, their small red lights blinking in the shadows. They are silent now, recharging their power cells after a night of scouring the floors and polishing the bar. I pass them by, my footsteps echoing on the hard metal flooring as I head toward the kitchen area to check the final seals on the food processors. The building is waking up in its own slow, mechanical way, preparing for the influx of pilots, traders, and travelers who will soon fill its halls. With the inventory confirmed and the cooling lines steady, I turn my attention to the heavy lift that will carry me back toward the flickering lights of the main floor. The kitchen is a place of lingering heat and the scent of spices that have soaked into the very stone of the walls. I step into the prep area where the air is thick with the aroma of roasted nerf meat and the sharp, metallic tang of the automated slicers. The heavy industrial ovens are cooling down now, their ceramic casings ticking softly as the temperature drops. I run a hand over the smooth, scorched surface of the main grill, feeling the residual warmth that still radiates from the heating elements. It is a comforting heat, a reminder of the frantic energy that filled this space only an hour ago. The silence here is different from the cellar. It is a heavy, expectant silence, filled with the ghosts of 1,000 meals. I pick up a damp cloth and begin to wipe down the prep station, my movements slow and deliberate as I clear away the last traces of the night's service. The water in the basin is warm, and the soap smells of citrus and industrial disinfectant, a sharp contrast to the earthy scents of the kitchen. I scrub the metal surface until it gleams under the dim, recessed lighting, the rhythmic motion of my arm, providing a steady beat to my thoughts. Every scratch on this table tells a story, a slip of a blade during a busy rush, or the heavy impact of a krayt delivered in a hurry. I notice a deep gouge near the corner, likely from a vibro blade, a reminder that even in the kitchen the tensions of the outer rim can flare up. I work the cloth into the groove, removing the grit and grime until the metal is as clean as it can be. The kitchen is the heart of the cantina, the engine that keeps the patrons satisfied and the credits flowing. It requires a different kind of care, a more tactile, immediate attention than the mechanical systems of the basement. I move to the spice rack, a massive, rotating carousel of jars filled with powders and dried herbs from across the galaxy. I spin it slowly, the bearings clicking softly as the different colors and textures pass before my eyes. There is the deep red of Corellian pepper, the pale yellow of Rylothian ginger, and the shimmering blue of crystal salt from the moons of Pantora. Each jar is a tiny piece of a distant world, brought here to this dusty outpost to add flavor to the lives of travelers. I check the seals on each container, ensuring that the moisture of the desert air does not ruin the precious contents. A single loose lid could spoil a shipment that cost more than a month's wages, and I take no chances with the inventory. The smells are intoxicating, a complex tapestry of sweet, savory, and pungent notes that hang heavy in the air. Behind the spice rack, the large refrigeration unit hums with a low, vibrating frequency that I can feel in my teeth. I open the heavy, insulated door, and a cloud of cold mist spills out, swirling around my boots like a phantom from the dune sea. Inside, the shelves are stocked with crates of fresh produce and cuts of meat, all kept in a state of suspended animation by the cryo coils. I check the temperature gauge, the glowing blue numbers indicating that the system is operating within the optimal range. 34 degrees, a perfect biting cold that preserves the freshness of the food against the relentless heat of the twin suns. I rearrange a few crates, making sure the airflow is unobstructed and the oldest supplies are positioned at the front. It is a simple task, but one that requires focus and a steady hand in the cramped, freezing space. I close the refrigerator door, the seal engaging with a satisfying airtight thud, and return to the warmth of the main kitchen. In the corner, the waste disposal unit sits silent, its heavy durasteel lid closed tight against the smells of the refuse. I activate the cleaning cycle, and the machine groans to life, the sound of grinding gears and rushing water echoing through the room. It is a necessary, if unpleasant, part of the job, ensuring that the kitchen remains sanitary and free of pests. I watch the status lights as they transition from amber to green, signaling that the cycle is complete and the waste has been processed. The machine settles back into its dormant state, the only sound remaining being the drip of water into the drainage grate. I take a moment to breathe, the air in the kitchen feeling lighter now as the cleaning progresses. I turn my attention to the droid maintenance bay, a small alcove tucked away behind the main prep area. This is where the service droids are repaired and recharged, their mechanical bodies resting on heavy hydraulic lifts. I see a small spherical utility droid, its chassis covered in dents and scratches from years of hard labor in the cantina. I pick up a canister of lubricant and begin to apply it to the droid's joints, the clear, viscous fluid seeping into the hinges. I can feel the tension in the metal, the way the parts have worn down over time, creating a unique character for this humble machine. It has seen more of the cantina's history than most of the patrons, a silent witness to the deals made and the secrets shared. I wipe away the excess oil, my fingers feeling the cold, hard surface of the plating and the warmth of the internal battery. There is a pile of discarded components on the workbench, a collection of burnt-out circuits and frayed wires that tell of the constant battle against wear and tear. I sort through them, looking for anything that might be salvaged or repurposed for a future repair. I find a small copper coupling that is still in good condition and set it aside, its metallic sheen catching the light. The resourcefulness of the outer rim is born of necessity, a habit of making do with what you have and never throwing anything away. I spend a few minutes organizing the tools, the wrenches and soldering irons, laid out in neat rows on the magnetic rack. A tidy workspace is essential for quick repairs, especially when a droid breaks down in the middle of a busy shift. I move toward the back exit, the heavy blast door that leads to the loading dock, and the alleyway beyond. I check the locking mechanism, the heavy bolts sliding into place with a series of deep, resonant clunks. This door is the primary entry point for supplies, and it must be secured against the scavengers and thieves that roam the streets of Mos Eisley. I peer through the small reinforced viewport, looking out into the darkness of the alley, where the shadows are long and distorted. The wind is picking up, whipping sand against the exterior of the building, the sound like 1,000 tiny claws scratching at the stone. It is a lonely, desolate sight, a reminder of the harsh reality of life on Tatooine, where the environment is as dangerous as the people. I turn away from the door, the cold air of the alleyway lingering in my mind. In the center of the kitchen, the large copper soup kettle sits on its pedestal, its surface polished to a high shine. I lift the lid, and the steam that rises is thin and wispy, the last remnants of the day's broth still clinging to the sides. I begin the process of scrubbing the interior, the metal sponge raspy against the copper as I remove the charred bits from the bottom. It is a slow, methodical process, requiring a fair amount of physical effort, but I find it meditative. The repetitive motion, the sound of the scrubbing, and the warmth of the kettle all combine to create a sense of calm. I rinse the kettle with hot water, the steam rising around my face and filling my lungs with its moist, earthy scent. The copper glows in the low light, a warm, inviting beacon in the middle of the functional space. I check the overhead ventilation fans, their large serrated blades spinning slowly as they pull the heat and smoke out of the room. I can hear the faint whistle of the wind as it passes through the external vents, a high-pitched, mournful sound that cuts through the hum of the machinery. I adjust the speed of the fans, slowing them down to a whisper to conserve power during the quiet hours of the night. The air in the kitchen becomes still, the only movement being the gentle drift of dust motes caught in the beams of the recessed lights. I lean against the prep table, taking a moment to rest my weary legs and listen to the symphony of the building. It is a complex, layered sound composed of 1,000 different mechanical and environmental elements, all working together in harmony. I notice a small, flickering light on the security console, indicating a minor fluctuation in the power grid. I move to the panel, my fingers dancing over the tactile buttons as I navigate the diagnostic menus. It is a common occurrence in Mos Eisley, where the power supply is often unstable and prone to surges. I redirect the flow of energy from the non-essential systems to the primary refrigeration units, ensuring that the food remains cold. The flicker stops, the light on the console returning to a steady, reassuring green, and I feel a small sense of relief. Maintaining the delicate balance of the cantina's systems is a constant challenge, but one that I have grown to appreciate. It is a quiet, invisible labor that ensures the comfort and safety of everyone who enters these walls. I walk over to the pantry, a large walk-in closet filled with sacks of grain and barrels of pickled vegetables. The air here is dry and dusty, the scent of burlap and earth hanging heavy in the small space. I count the sacks, cross-referencing them with the inventory list that I carry on my data pad. We are running low on Tatooine wheat, a staple for the local bread, and I make a note to order more before the next merchant caravan arrives. The logistics of the kitchen are a never-ending puzzle, a constant cycle of consumption and replenishment that requires careful planning. I move a few barrels, checking for any signs of leaks or spoilage, and find everything to be in good order. The pantry is a quiet, unassuming place, but it holds the sustenance that keeps the cantina alive. I return to the main prep area, where the light is beginning to shift, as the first hints of dawn appear on the horizon. The shadows in the kitchen grow longer and more defined, the shapes of the equipment taking on a new, more mysterious quality. I pick up a stack of clean trays and begin to distribute them to the various serving stations around the room. Each tray is heavy and solid, made of a durable alloy that can withstand the rigors of the cantina floor. I place them carefully, ensuring that they are neatly stacked and easy for the servers to reach. It is a small detail, but one that helps the morning shift to start their day with ease and efficiency. The kitchen is almost ready. The surface is clean, the supplies stocked, and the machines humming quietly. I take one final look around the room, my eyes scanning the counters, the shelves, and the floor for anything I might have missed. I see a small puddle of water near the drainage grate, and I quickly mop it up, the floor now dry and safe. The kitchen feels different now than it did when I first entered. It is more orderly, more peaceful, and ready for the challenges of the new day. I feel a sense of pride in my work, a knowledge that I have done my part to keep this small corner of the galaxy running smoothly. The silence is no longer heavy. It is a clean, fresh silence that speaks of new beginnings and possibilities. I turn off the main lights, the room plunging into a soft amber glow that highlights the textures of the stone and metal. I walk toward the service corridor, my footsteps echoing softly on the floor as I leave the kitchen behind. The air in the corridor is cooler and the light is dimmer, a transition back to the more industrial parts of the building. I pass the laundry room, where the large, drum-like machines are slowly tumbling, the sound of wet fabric, a rhythmic splashing noise. The scent of clean linen and hot steam drifts out into the hallway, a pleasant, domestic smell that feels out of place in this rugged environment. I stop for a moment to check the progress of the machines, the timers indicating that they have another 20 minutes before the cycle is finished. I will return later to fold the cloths and stack them in the storage bins, but for now I continue on my path. I reach the intersection of the corridors where the path splits toward the main floor and the administrative offices. I choose the path toward the offices, a quiet, carpeted hallway that feels more refined than the rest of the building. The walls are decorated with old holos of the cantina in its younger days and maps of the surrounding desert. I walk slowly, my eyes tracing the familiar lines of the landscape, the canyons and dunes that I have known all my life. The office is where the business of the cantina is conducted, the contracts signed, and the credits counted. It is a place of serious talk and quiet negotiations, a far cry from the noise and chaos of the main floor. I reach the door to the manager's office and pause, listening to the silence that emanates from within. I check the lock on the office door, the electronic keypad glowing with a soft blue light as I enter the security code. The door slides open with a whisper, revealing a small, cluttered room filled with datapads, files, and personal mementos. I don't enter. I only check that the room is secure and that the internal sensors are functioning correctly. The manager is a busy person, and they value their privacy, a sentiment that I can certainly understand. I close the door, the lock engaging with a soft click, and turn back toward the corridor. My rounds are nearly complete. The final checks of the night are almost finished. I feel the weight of the night's labor, but it is a good weight, a feeling of accomplishment and purpose. I walk back toward the main floor, the transition from the quiet corridors to the open space of the bar, feeling like a return to the world. The bar is still dark, the only light coming from the glowing bottles and the faint illumination from the kitchen. I see the silhouette of the stage, where the band will soon be playing their lively, upbeat music for the morning crowd. The instruments are covered in protective cloths, their shapes mysterious and alluring in the shadows. I imagine the sound of the music, the way it fills the room and lifts the spirits of everyone who hears it. It is a powerful force, a universal language that brings people together, even in a place as divided as this. I walk toward the center of the room, my boots making a hollow sound on the tiled floor. I stop at the base of the bar and look up at the intricate network of pipes and tubes that deliver the drinks to the taps. They look like the veins and arteries of the building, a complex system that keeps the lifeblood of the cantina flowing. I reach out and touch one of the pipes, the metal feeling cold and smooth under my hand. I can feel the faint vibration of the pumps as they maintain the pressure in the lines, ensuring that every drink is served at the perfect temperature. It is a marvel of engineering, a testament to the ingenuity of the people who built this place. I stand there for a long moment, lost in thought, as I contemplate the history and the future of this remarkable establishment. The first light of the twin suns begins to filter through the high windows, casting long golden streaks across the floor. The shadows retreat, the details of the room becoming clearer as the day truly begins. I take a deep breath, the air feeling fresh and cool as I prepare to finish my shift. The transition from night to day is a quiet, beautiful process, a reminder that no matter how dark the night, the suns will always rise. I walk toward the main entrance, the heavy doors still closed and barred against the morning wind. I reach for the controls, my hand hovering over the button, as I prepare to open the cantina to the world once more. The heavy mechanical lock groans. As I press the activation stud, a sound of metal against metal that echoes through the empty foyer. The massive doors, thick and scarred by years of sandstorms, begin to slide apart, revealing the pale, early light of the morning. A rush of cool, dry air flows into the room, carrying the scent of dust and the faint metallic tang of the moisture vaporators. I step onto the threshold, the sand crunching beneath my boots as I look out over the quiet street. The twin suns are still low on the horizon, casting long purple shadows across the domed roofs of the city. It is a moment of stillness, a brief pause before the heat of the day and the noise of the crowds take hold of the streets. I take a long, deep breath, feeling the coolness in my lungs and the weight of the night slowly lifting from my shoulders. The horizon is a soft gradient of gold and orange, a stark contrast to the deep blue of the night sky that is slowly fading away. I reach for the long-handled broom that leans against the interior wall, its bristles worn and stiff from years of use. I begin to sweep the fine orange sand that has accumulated in the door tracks overnight, the rhythmic sound of the bristles a soothing accompaniment to the morning quiet. Each stroke is deliberate and slow, clearing the path for the many feet that will soon be passing through these doors. The sand is fine and powdery, a constant presence in this desert city, a reminder of the harsh environment that surrounds us. I move to the exterior of the building, the light of the suns feeling warm on my face, despite the lingering chill of the night. I check the exterior blast shields, ensuring that they are properly seated and that the emergency release is unobstructed. The metal is warm to the touch, having absorbed the heat of the previous day and then cooled in the night air. I see the faint marks of blaster fire on the lower panels, scars from a long-forgotten skirmish that have become part of the building's history. A few paces away, the moisture vaporator chuffs rhythmically, a steady, mechanical heartbeat in the morning air. I walk over to the unit, my boots sinking slightly into the soft sand, and check the collection gauge. The needle sits at 42%, a respectable harvest for a night with such low humidity and a clear sign that the condensers are working efficiently. I tap the glass of the gauge, the sound sharp and clear, before turning back toward the cantina entrance. In the distance, I see a small, boxy power droid trundling slowly down the street, its mechanical legs moving with a repetitive clanking motion. It is making its early morning rounds, delivering power cells to the various shops and residences that line the thoroughfare. The droid pauses for a moment, its sensors scanning the area before continuing on its way, a solitary figure in the vast, empty street. I watch it for a moment, feeling a sense of kinship with the machine, both of us performing our quiet, essential tasks, while the rest of the city sleeps. I return to the doorway and give the threshold one final sweep, ensuring that every grain of sand is cleared away. I lean the broom back against the wall, its work finished for now, and look back into the darkened interior of the bar. The contrast between the bright morning light and the deep shadows of the cantina is striking, a reminder of the two worlds that coexist within these walls. I step back inside, the air feeling cooler and more familiar, as I prepare for the next stage of my morning routine. I head toward the storage room at the back, the door sliding open with a soft pneumatic hiss that I have come to know so well. The room is filled with crates and containers stacked neatly on reinforced shelves, their labels glowing faintly in the dim light. I begin the task of moving the new shipment of supplies, which arrived late last night, to their proper places in the inventory. Each crate is heavy, filled with the various liquids and foodstuffs that keep the cantina running throughout the day. I lift a crate of fermented tubers, the wood of the container feeling rough and splintered against my gloved hands. I move it to the cooling rack, the metal of the shelf groaning slightly under the weight as I slide it into place. The smell of the tubers is earthy and pungent, a scent that reminds me of the agricultural worlds, far beyond the desert horizons of this planet. I continue the work, moving one crate after another, my movements steady and efficient as I organize the chaos of the delivery. I enter the cold storage locker, a small, insulated room where the most delicate supplies are kept. The air here is freezing, my breath forming soft white clouds as I move through the narrow aisles. I see the thin layer of frost that has formed on the copper cooling pipes, the ice crystals sparkling like tiny diamonds in the glow of my handheld light. I check the temperature setting, ensuring that it remains at a steady 4 degrees, the perfect environment for preserving the rare and expensive delicacies that the cantina offers. I find the container of blue milk, its surface smooth and opaque, and move it to the front of the shelf for easy access. The liquid is a staple of the local diet, a nutritious and refreshing drink that is popular with both locals and travelers alike. I check the seal on the container, ensuring that it is tight and secure before moving on to the next item. The quiet in the cold storage is absolute, a stark contrast to the low hum of the machinery that fills the rest of the building. I exit the locker, the warmth of the storage room feeling like a gentle embrace after the biting cold of the freezer. I pick up my datapad, the screen glowing with a soft blue light, and begin to log the items I have moved. I enter the quantities and descriptions, my fingers moving across the interface with the ease of long practice. Each entry is a small piece of the puzzle, a way of keeping track of the complex flow of goods that sustains the life of the cantina. I finish the inventory check and set the datapad aside, feeling a sense of satisfaction in a job well done. The storage room is now organized and tidy, the supplies ready for the busy day ahead. I take a moment to rest, leaning against one of the heavy shelves and listening to the quiet sounds of the building. I can hear the distant hum of the city's power grid and the faint rhythmic pulse of the cantina's own life support systems, a symphony of machinery that never truly sleeps. I make my way back to the main bar area, my footsteps echoing in the large, open space. I head behind the counter and begin the process of preparing the morning's stim calf, the aroma of the roasted beans already beginning to fill the air. I pour the water into the industrial brewer, the sound of the liquid splashing against the metal, a bright and cheerful noise in the quiet room. I activate the heating element and wait for the steam to begin rising from the spout of the machine. As the cafe brews, I take a clean cloth and begin to polish the brass rails that run along the base of the bar. I move the cloth in slow circular motions, buffing away the smudges and fingerprints left behind by the previous night's patrons. The metal begins to shine, reflecting the golden light of the suns that is now pouring through the high windows. It is a simple task, but one that I take great pride in, a way of showing respect for the history and character of this place. I look up as a shadow falls across the doorway and see a solitary figure standing on the threshold. It is one of the regulars, an elderly man who always arrives just as the suns are rising to enjoy a quiet cup of caf before the crowds arrive. He doesn't say a word, only nods to me as he takes his usual seat at the end of the bar. I pour him a steaming mug of the dark liquid and set it down before him, the heat of the cup warming his weathered hands. He takes a slow, appreciative sip, the steam rising around his face, and I see a faint smile touch his lips. We don't need to speak, the shared silence of the morning being enough of a conversation for both of us. I continue my work, refilling the snack bowls with dried crunchies and checking the levels of the various taps. The cantina is slowly coming to life, the transition from the quiet of the night to the energy of the day almost complete. I take one last look around the room, ensuring that everything is in its proper place and that the cantina is ready for the world. The tables are clean, the bar is polished, and the air is filled with the welcoming scent of fresh cafe. I feel a sense of pride in my work, knowing that I have played my part in maintaining the sanctuary that this place provides. The first true bustle of the morning is still an hour away, but the foundation for the day is now firmly in place. The morning air is still thin and sharp, carrying the faint scent of parched earth and distant fuel exhaust. I leave the regular to his quiet contemplation and step toward the heavy durasteel door that leads to the storage vaults. The hinges groan, a low metallic complaint that echoes through the stone corridor as I pull it open. Inside, the temperature drops significantly, the thick sandstone walls acting as a natural insulator against the rising heat of the twin suns. I run my hand along the cool surface of the wall, feeling the rough, ancient texture of the stone. This part of the building was carved out of the bedrock long before the cantina ever existed, a remnant of an older, more forgotten Mos Eisley. I can feel the weight of the desert pressing in from all sides, a silent, heavy presence that demands respect. I move deeper into the vault, my footsteps muffled by the layer of fine sand that has managed to seep through the cracks over the years. I reach the first of the storage racks, where the rare and imported spirits are kept, their bottles gleaming faintly in the dim light. I check the seals on a crate of Corellian spiced ale, the wax stoppers still intact and smelling faintly of cloves and cinnamon. It is a valuable cargo, one that requires careful handling and even more careful record-keeping. I pull a small, handheld data pad from my pocket, its screen glowing with a soft blue light as I log the remaining stock. There is a certain satisfaction in this quiet inventory, a sense of order and control in a world that is often chaotic and unpredictable. I move to the next rack where the local brews are stored, their ceramic jugs heavy and cool to the touch. These are the staples of the cantina, the drinks that fuel the long nights and the even longer stories of the travelers who pass through. I check the levels of the large fermentation tanks, the liquid inside bubbling softly as it continues its slow transformation. I can hear the rhythmic pulsing of the cooling units, a steady mechanical heartbeat that keeps the vault at the perfect temperature. It is a comforting sound, a reminder of the technology that allows us to survive and even thrive in this harsh environment. I pause for a moment, simply listening to the hum of the machinery and the distant, muffled sounds of the city waking up outside. The world is beginning to stir, but here in the vault, time seems to stand still. I move toward the back of the storage area, where the droid charging station is tucked into a small alcove. The air here smells of ozone and hot metal, a sharp contrast to the cool, earthy scent of the rest of the vault. I check the status of the two power droids, their blocky forms silent and still as they draw energy from the wall sockets. Their lights flicker rhythmically, a slow, steady pulse of amber and green that indicates they are nearly fully charged. I take a moment to wipe away the dust that has accumulated on their casings using a soft, lint-free cloth. It is a small gesture of care, but one that is necessary to keep the droids functioning at their best. They are the unsung heroes of the cantina, the ones who keep the power flowing and the systems running smoothly. I pat the side of the larger droid, a silent thank you for its service, before moving on to the next task. I find myself near the secondary moisture intake, a series of heavy pipes that disappear into the ceiling. I place my hand on the metal, feeling the slight vibration of the water as it is drawn from the outside air and filtered into the reservoir. Water is life on this planet, a precious commodity that is never taken for granted and always handled with the utmost care. I check the pressure gauges, their needles resting comfortably in the green zones, indicating that the system is operating at peak efficiency. I climb a small metal ladder that leads to a narrow maintenance crawl space, located just beneath the roof. The space is cramped and dusty, but it offers a unique perspective on the cantina and the world beyond its walls. I crawl forward until I reach a small observation port, a thick piece of reinforced glass that looks out over the surrounding rooftops. The twin suns are higher now, their light washing over the city in a brilliant golden glow. I can see the first few speeders moving through the streets, their engines kicking up small clouds of dust as they head toward the spaceport. The city is coming to life, a slow and deliberate process that happens every single morning, without fail. I watch as a group of Jawas begins to set up their junk stall, their small hooded forms moving with surprising speed and efficiency. It is a scene of quiet industry, a reminder that life on Tatooine is a constant struggle for survival. I descend the ladder and make my way back through the storage vault, the heavy Durasteel door closing behind me with a solid, reassuring thud. I return to the main bar area where the light is now streaming through the high windows in long, dusty shafts. The elderly regular has finished his café and is now staring out the window, his expression unreadable and distant. I take his empty mug and place it in the washer, the sound of the clinking ceramic, a familiar and grounding noise. I begin to prepare the first batch of breakfast rations, the smell of toasted grains and dried fruits filling the air. It is a simple meal, but one that is hearty and filling, providing the energy needed for a long day of work. I arrange the bowls on a large metal tray, their bright colors a welcome sight in the muted light of the morning. I feel a sense of accomplishment, knowing that I have prepared the cantina for another day of service. I take a moment to look at the various curios and trophies that adorn the walls of the cantina, each one with its own story to tell. There is a rusted blaster rifle, a piece of a krayt dragon bone, and a faded tapestry from a world that no longer exists. These objects are more than just decorations. They are a testament to the diverse and often dangerous lives of the people who frequent this place. I feel a deep sense of connection to these stories, a sense of being part of something much larger than myself. I move to the corner where the band usually plays, the stage now empty and silent, save for the faint hum of the sound system. I check the connections on the instruments, ensuring that everything is ready for the evening's performance. The music is the heart of the cantina, the thing that draws people in and keeps them coming back, night after night. I can almost hear the echoes of the melodies, the rhythmic beat of the drums, and the soulful wail of the flutes. I take a clean cloth and begin to wipe down the stage, removing the scuff marks and spills from the previous night. It is a labor of love, a way of honoring the musicians who bring so much life and energy to this space. The wood is worn and smooth, polished by years of use and the footsteps of countless performers. I move the cloth in slow, rhythmic circles, the sound of the friction a soft, steady hum in the quiet room. I look up as the main entrance doors hiss open and a cool breeze blows into the room, carrying the scent of the desert. A small group of freighter pilots enters, their flight suits dusty and worn, their faces etched with the fatigue of a long journey. They head straight for the bar, their voices low and hushed as they discuss their next cargo and their next destination. I greet them with a nod and a quiet word, already reaching for the cafe pot to fill their mugs. I serve them their drinks and their breakfast rations, watching as they eat with a quiet, focused intensity. They are men of few words, their lives defined by the vastness of space and the constant hum of their engines. I feel a sense of kinship with them, a shared understanding of the quiet, solitary nature of our work. We are all just trying to make our way in the galaxy, one day and one shift at a time. I move to the back of the bar once more, to check on the status of the refrigeration units and the various cooling systems. Everything seems to be in order, the machinery humming along with a steady and reliable rhythm. I take a deep breath, the air cool and crisp in my lungs, and feel a sense of peace and contentment wash over me. The long night is over, and the new day has begun, bringing with it new challenges and new opportunities. I look around the cantina one last time, taking in the familiar sights and sounds, and the unique atmosphere of this place. It is a sanctuary, a home away from home for the weary traveler, and a place of refuge from the harsh reality of the desert. I am proud to be a part of it, to be the one who keeps the lights on and the drinks flowing even in the quietest hours of the night. The suns are high in the sky now, their light filling the room with a brilliant golden radiance. I step toward the front windows, looking out at the bustling street and the distant horizon, where the sand meets the sky. The day is in full swing now, the city alive with the sounds of commerce and conversation, and the constant movement of people and machines. I feel a sense of readiness, a sense of being prepared for whatever the day may bring, as the first true wave of morning customers begins to gather at the threshold. The heavy boots of my replacement click and echo against the stone floor. It is a familiar sound, the signal that my watch is finally coming to an end. We trade places behind the bar, a wordless transition, honed by years of repetition. I hand over the heavy ring of keys, their metal cold and worn smooth by the touch of many hands. I watch as the day shift bartender sets his own kit upon the counter. He brings with him the scent of the morning, a sharp metallic tang of ozone, and the dry, parched smell of the dunes. We exchange a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement of the shift change and the long hours that lie ahead for him. The credits from the night's trade are locked away in the floor safe, the heavy tumblers clicking into place with a satisfying final thud. I take a moment to look around, the space I have occupied for these last 12 hours. The shadows are retreating now, pushed back by the relentless golden light of the twin suns. The cantina feels different in this light, less like a den of secrets and more like a simple place of business. The stone walls, which seemed so imposing in the dark, now appear weathered and ancient, their surfaces etched with the history of 1,000 travelers. I reach for my cloak, the fabric heavy and thick, designed to shield me from the heat and the stinging sand. I drape it over my shoulders, feeling its familiar weight and the way it settles against my skin. My muscles are weary, a dull ache beginning to set in, but it is a good kind of tiredness. It is the exhaustion of a job well done, of a night spent in the service of others. I walk toward the main entrance, my footsteps sounding loud in the relatively quiet room. The morning crowd is still small, their voices low as they nurse their first drinks of the day. They are different from the night crowd, less desperate, less driven by the need to forget. They are the workers, the traders, the ones who keep the city moving during the long, hot hours of the day. I push open the heavy doors, and the heat hits me like a physical blow. It is a dry, searing heat that seems to suck the moisture right out of the air. I squint against the brilliance of the suns, their light bouncing off the whitewashed buildings and the pale sand. The street is already busy, a chaotic mix of people and droids and pack animals, all moving with a sense of purpose. I begin my walk home, my pace slow and steady. I move through the narrow alleys, where the shadows are still long and the air is slightly cooler. I pass the stalls of the local merchants, who are busy setting out their wares, their voices calling out to the passers-by. There is the smell of roasting meat and exotic spices and the sharp, pungent scent of the livestock. I see a group of Jawas huddling around a pile of scrap metal, their high-pitched chatter filling the air. They ignore me as I pass, their glowing yellow eyes fixed on their latest find. I wonder what treasures they have discovered in the vast, unforgiving wastes of the desert. To them, every piece of junk is a potential fortune, a way to survive for another day. I turn a corner, and the sound of the market fades, replaced by the low, constant hum of the moisture vaporators. They stand like tall, skeletal sentinels, their cooling fins vibrating as they pull water from the thin, dry air. It is a vital technology, the lifeblood of this desert world, and I find the sound of their operation oddly comforting. It is a reminder of the ingenuity and the resilience of those who call this place home. My dwelling is small, a simple structure of stone and clay, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. I reach the door and place my hand against the cool surface, feeling the faint vibration of the city's power grid. I enter the code, and the door slides open with a soft mechanical hiss. Inside, the air is cool and still a welcome relief from the heat of the street. I move through the small living space, my movements slow and deliberate. I set my cloak aside and pour myself a glass of water, the liquid cool and refreshing as it slides down my throat. I sit for a moment in the dim light and let the silence of the room wrap around me. It is a peaceful time, a time to decompress and reflect on the events of the night. I think of the pilots and their stories of the outer rim, of the musicians and their haunting melodies. I think of the quiet moments, the hum of the machinery and the way the shadows danced on the walls of the cantina. These are the things that stay with me, the small details that make up the tapestry of my life. I am a witness to the stories of others, a silent observer of the galaxy's many wonders. I rise from my seat and move toward the sleeping quarters. I close the heavy shutters, blocking out the brilliant light of the suns and plunging the room into darkness. The only sound is the soft, rhythmic hum of the ventilation system, a steady, pulsing beat that seems to sync with my own breathing. I lie down on the bed, feeling the coolness of the sheets and the way my body sinks into the soft mattress. I close my eyes, and the images of the night begin to fade, replaced by the soft grey veil of sleep. I feel myself drifting, slipping away from the world of the waking and into the quiet, peaceful realm of dreams. The desert is still out there, the sun's still beating down on the sand. But here, in this small dark room, there is only stillness. I think of the night shift to come, the familiar routines and the quiet tasks that await me. I think of the people I will meet and the stories I will hear, and the way the cantina will feel in the hours before the dawn. It is a cycle, a never-ending loop of work and rest, and I find a sense of comfort in its predictability. It is my place in the galaxy, my small contribution to the grand design. I can hear the distant sound of a starship, its engines roaring as it climbs into the sky. It is a reminder of the vastness of space and the infinite possibilities that lie beyond the horizon. But for now, my world is small and quiet and very, very still. I am content to stay here in the darkness and let the world go on without me. My breathing slows, becoming deep and regular. The tension leaves my body, and I feel a sense of profound peace wash over me. The long night is truly over, and the day is well underway. But for me, the time of rest has finally arrived. I surrender to the pull of sleep, letting it take me down into the cool, dark depths. I dream of the desert at night, when the air is cold and the stars are like diamonds scattered across a black velvet sky. I dream of the silence of the dunes and the way the wind whispers through the canyons. It is a beautiful and lonely place, a place where one can truly be alone with their thoughts. And in my dream, I am at peace, a part of the desert, and the desert a part of me. I wake for a brief moment, the sound of a distant bell drifting through the air. It is a signal of some kind, a marker of the passing hours, but it seems unimportant now. I turn over, pulling the blanket closer, and sink back into the darkness. The world can wait, the suns can burn, and the city can bustle. But here there is only sleep. As the twin suns reach their zenith, casting no shadows on the parched earth below, I find the final, deep rest I have earned through the long, watchful hours of the night, and I am ready to dream of the stars until the moons rise once again. Thank you for spending this evening with me. Until next time on Canon and Calm, sleep well.